Yeah, go for it.
Okay, perfect. All right, so meeting is called to order at 5:35. Thank you everyone for coming. We'll start with the territorial acknowledgement. So the Board of Directors acknowledges that the University of Waterloo is on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our organization operates on the Haldeman Tract, land promised to the Six Nations, which includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. So we'll start with the chair remarks. Thankfully for everyone, I don't have a very long one this time around. What's that?
Are we live?
Yes, we're live. So nothing too long. I've been pretty impressed by how productive the board has been in the past, and I'm hoping we keep it that. I will say there's the introduction of a kind of a new system that we'll be starting, where we'll be having estimates for the amount of time that we'll be having for each agenda item. These aren't limits, of course, but they are recommendations. So once we pass these time limits, I will let people know, and there'll be a little bit more pressure to close things off. It also does not mean that we have to hit the time limits. It is just that is how much I'm allocated. Now, on that note, I will also say I've had a conversation with orientation about the possible need for support from board members. It's something that's done on most years, that board members will come and support first years in orientation as well as welcome week. Just a really quick show of hands before we move forward. I just want to get an idea how many people are interested in supporting a week as a volunteer. I'm also working. Okay.
I'm in Toronto.
All right. I was hoping to see a little bit more, but that'll be good for now. And I'll send a link for later for people to sign up. Another thing is that, final thing is I'm hopeful with the amount of practice we've had with board meetings. I think this is our 4th board meeting at this point. We can be productive and efficient. If you're not adding anything new to a conversation and you're just agreeing, maybe don't say anything at all. So that's what I'll say. Usually we don't take questions, Mohammed. Is this what do you have to say?
It's in reference to what you were saying about the recommended time durations for each motion. Where are those?
So I will be sharing them for each item. This time around, I did just send them, but I'll send them here as well, actually. Let me
just so we have them before we move forward, so we can keep track of that when we enter each motion.
Yep, I'll send them here. But Mike will be helping me keep track of them as well. But yeah, so I've sent them in the board chat, so you should be able to see them there. Okay, on that note, is there anybody who objects to approving the agenda as is? Oh, yes. Okay.
I am going to amend 2.4 friendly to change from October to November, so staff have some more time.
Okay, so this is you're the one moving this, so we can just amend this as friendly. We don't have to take it out of consent. Okay, I'll ask it again. Does anyone object to approving the agenda as is with Mohammed?
Yeah, I intend to make a friendly amendment to my motion that's in the consent agenda. That is item 2.2.
Okay, can you put that in the chat, please?
Yep, it's in the chat right now.
Same thing for you, Samir. Okay, I'll ask that this stuff be sent to me beforehand as well, if you know that you're going to be making this amendment on the floor. What changes?
Me or Samir? Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially, we're adding on the final line that says, with consultation to be completed by the end of October 2025. We're just putting in a guideline of when we want the consultation to conclude.
Okay, perfect. Last time I'm asking the question, does anyone object to passing the agenda as approved, as is presented? Thank you. Perfect. All right, approved. Anybody have any conflict of interest they'd like to declare? Perfect. Well, that's exciting. We'll move on to the we are starting off today with a presentation from Capacity Canada, specifically Don, on effective board meetings. So, oh yes, Esther, go ahead.
Sorry, you skipped.
You didn't pass the agenda.
Oh, I apologize. I approved the agenda, but yeah, okay. Thank you for that. I forgot that's a different thing. For consent, does anyone object to the consent agenda? Or would like to pull anything else? Perfect. Okay, we're good. And on that note, now we'll move on to the presentation. Forgive me, guys, on board training from Don. All right, Don, whenever you're.
And let me say, I'm really pleased to be here. I've been to a couple with the previous board, and you guys do such a great job. I mean, you do a lot of work, and your board meetings are full of all sorts of stuff, and you do a great job of getting through it. So what I want to do today is just talk a little bit about efficiency at the board meeting, and because Damien and I have not seen you in action, so nothing here reflects on you and what you're doing. Okay, so a lot of this is going to be just kind of a review, but some tips and some kind of suggestions about what you might consider going forward. And a lot of what I'm talking about, you're already doing. One of the really big things that I really like in your agenda is consent agenda. Nobody wanted to pull anything out. That is a really good sign. That means it's well constructed. It's based on a lot of activity that you've had in the past. So this is really great. So next slide, probably. So I'm going to start out, but you've had 4 board meetings under your belt already. So what is the biggest frustration coming to the board meeting? What is it that you are a little disappointed in, or feels a waste of time, or you can't wait to get through it?
If it's criticism of me, you can say it.
I do that behind your back.
What do you think? Yeah,
Our meetings are very long at times,
they are long.
and it's also, I would say, stop. It isn't just length, because length can sometimes be a reason, but stuff that shouldn't be taking as long, like that long, is taking that long.
Because people are kind of talking offline or kind of diverting, or why? Why is it taking? Yep.
A lot of
Well, I mean, Melanie was.
Yeah, sorry.
It's my complaint is that conversations can get very circular at times.
Yes.
Everyone is just either like agreeing on the same thing and adding like 2 more sentences, and someone else agrees on the same thing that was just said and adds 1 sentence. And just,
Yep.
it's the same thing they said 5 times.
Yep, exactly. But yep.
Yeah, I think another reason why it might be taking longer and we're spending so much time is, I think in the past, and this is partially criticism myself, is that the way that the agenda was set up is that sometimes we'd have important discussions at the end of the agenda, and some of this stuff that's at the start, maybe you wouldn't expect it to take too much time, but because it's at the start and people are energized and they'll get into as much detail as they want.
Really, really, really good point. I'm going to talk about that later on, but most important, right after the consent agenda, the most important, and that's of course why you put me right after the consent agenda. So good stuff. Now online, it's hard for me to see if you've got your hand up. Just unmic and shout out if you've got a frustration that you want to voice. Esther, what do you think? What's kind of from your perspective?
I think, like they've all said, it's the length of the meeting, and it's not because they're not having constructive or useful conversations.
Mhm.
It's the repetitiveness sometimes that makes it.
Yeah, and everybody wants to get involved. That's motivation, that's enthusiasm, but it adds time. What is the length of time that you want for your meetings? Is it 2 hours? Is it an hour and a half?
2
For
hours.
two?
Yeah, 2 hours is usually what we aim for, but been very optimistic.
So we'll talk a little bit about chair's role as we go along here, but often the chair's role is timekeeper. And sometimes if you delegate timekeeping to vice chair or someone else, sometimes that helps, and that kind of somebody else kind of encouraging or pushing can sometimes move things along. Let's go to the next slide. So a lot of what you accomplish here is all around your board culture. If you have a board culture that is really quite enthusiastic and you want to get into the details and you want to dig and ask questions, that is going to have an effect on the board meeting. If you have people who come and they are well prepared and they know exactly what they need to accomplish, and they don't chit chat around the topics, things move really quickly, and that's a different kind of culture as well. Sometimes you want this culture of inquiry or whatever it might be to grow your board, to make you develop more around what governance is all about. So sometimes it's a good thing, but you as a board need to consider what is the culture that you want around the board table. You certainly want it congenial. If you've got one or two people who are argumentative all the time, that, you know, some people are not going to want to come. You know, that's going to want to, they're going to turn off people, and they may drop off, or they may not speak up because they don't want to get into combative kind of an argument. But if it's a good debate and you feel like you've had your input and it comes to a good resolution, there's nothing more rewarding at the board table than feeling we've really talked about this and we've resolved it and we're moving on, come to conclusions. But you need that trust. You need to feel that you can contribute to make it work well. And probably the most important thing here is that you're an organization that has a vision, you've got a mission, you've got a strategic plan. You want to move that forward. So the planning of the whole meeting and moving this meeting forward around that strategic plan and the board plan is going to really have an impact. It's going to make a difference. It's going to create outcomes for you it's going to make everybody feel like you've really accomplished something. Next slide, please. So what I want to suggest we accomplish today is we learned about some key elements that you may not be aware of, share some tools and tips, and talk a little bit about pitfalls. And certainly the chit chat around the board table is a bit of a pitfall that every board encounters. So we'll talk about that as well. So the agenda is critical. The agenda is your meetings work plan. And of course, you've got a broader work plan. What do you want to accomplish over the year? But more time you spend on the agenda with the chair and the executive director, or Esther may be involved. I'm not sure what your process is, but that good balance of from the governance side, from the operations side, let's move these things forward. And you have a nice prototype agenda. So it's structured very nicely. You should be able to use it really well, but making sure you stick to that agenda is really key to achieving your objectives, but also ending on time. All right. One of the other things that many agendas do is they allocate time per topic on the agenda. And that makes it really easy for the timekeeper to be able to say, okay, we're over time, let's move along, or we've got more time. Is there more discussion, or should we move on to the next agenda? And you do the consent agenda really well, but remember that if there is any issue in those documents in the consent agenda that you feel needs discussion, it's your responsibility to speak up and talk about the fact that you want to pull it out to have that discussion. Even though people will turn and look at you because it means more time on the agenda, but you have a responsibility for your oversight to make sure that if there is something controversial, if there is something you don't understand, you need to pull it out. That is assuming you have read your package, you understand the package, and if you had a question beforehand, you've talked to Damien or Suzanne or Esther somebody beforehand to clarify. But if you think it's a board discussion, it's your obligation to ask that it be pulled out of the consent agenda. Next, please. Okay, so the agenda is all about getting the work done. So spending the time planning the agenda and making it realistic. Is it going to, can we accomplish all this in a reasonable period of time? And if not, maybe alert everybody that we may be a little longer this time, or is there a committee that can deal with it? Or is it an operational matter that maybe Suzanne can handle? Asking some of those questions as you work on the agenda is really important. The most important decision items right after the consent agenda, and then discussion after that. The package needs to support the agenda. So if there are areas of mystery around certain topics, that's going to create more discussion around the board table. But if there's some background reading in the package, assuming everybody reads that package, that can help make sure that people can move through it very quickly as well. And noting, and you have been, I understand from Sandra, quite good about identifying information or discussion or decision. And that also is key. We have time for discussion. It's on the agenda. Let's do this, but there's no decision required at this point in time. Or if it is a decision, do we have enough information? Let's have the discussion. And if we can't make a decision here at the board, perhaps it should go back to a committee first, or have someone or an ad hoc task force work it up. Next one, please. Sample agenda. So this is really crowded. You're not going to be able to read this, but it shows you that there are the timelines around an agenda. It can give you specific lengths of time that can really help the chair, really help the timekeeper in moving things through quickly. So if there was one thing above the agenda that you would like to change, what would it be? Yeah.
We could go back to that previous slide.
Sure.
Is that me? I think one of the pieces that I don't know if our board does that well, or maybe doesn't have enough time to. So that piece around board self-assessments, so just looking at some of the items that you highlighted here, of taking a step back and thinking, okay, how did the meeting go?
Yep.
How did the conversation go? Were we a strategic board for the conversation sort of in that area? And so I think that's something that could be worked to improve upon, I think.
I love it. I love it. And I'm going to talk about an evaluation of, there are lots of different kinds of evaluations. So you evaluate yourself as a board, probably annually. You evaluate the executive director, probably annually. Not a lot of boards evaluate their meetings. Very few committees evaluate their meetings. And it is rare for a board chair to be evaluated. So meeting evaluations fill a lot of gaps. They allow the board to talk about what was disturbing about the meeting, what was missing, where we could improve, but also what could we do next time? Is there opportunity to think about new topics that will move us forward as well? Thank you. It's great. Anybody else?
I think one thing is that we historically at least have not put, the like time estimates on the agenda, which I think has contributed to this feeling that they have to talk longer on issues that, because they feel like they're expected to. So I think that's one thing that needs to be improved. I do like the after meeting assessment though.
Good stuff. Okay, let's move on to the next. So preparation, really important. You've got big board package. There's a lot of reading there because there's a lot of work that's been done. So you need it well in advance. So 5 to 7 days is what they usually say. Longer than that would be great. The problem, of course, is meetings happen probably, or things happen after the package has been sent out. So you need to send that out and people need to catch up. But the obligation is still on all of us to be prepared for the meeting. And then remember kind of what your role is. Your role is oversight in all of its aspects, because you've delegated to Suzanne and staff the operations, and you need to respect that difference in roles. So the other thing on the board agenda is ensuring that what you're dealing with is governance matters. And what you've delegated to management is, let's get the reports back. Let's find out how we've been doing. Are we on policy? Is there any issue we need to be aware of? But clear separation of those roles, because you have that opportunity for the oversight. But if you're delving into the operations yourself, you're wasting board time, because you've got highly skilled people in place to carry things out. Great. That's, yeah, I just want to mention in the previous slide, maybe the fiduciary, strategic, and generative are all aspects of what you should be doing, but that reflects, of course, hindsight, oversight, and foresight. Are you thinking future oriented as you become strategic and generative? Are you being doing the oversight with what you have seen happen in the past, which is your fiduciary? All right. So the role of the president, role of the chair of the board, prepare the agenda with the executive director and others, guide the discussion, keep on time, encourage all voices. If you've got quiet people or those introverts who need time to kind of digest, you need to respect that, but you also need to make sure that they at least have a voice at some point in time during the meeting, so that you can move forward. The chair needs to kind of model that respect for everyone else, because part of the chair's role is to put people in their place if they get out of line. If there's a argument and it becomes personal, or if it becomes negative, or it becomes combative in any kind of aspect, the chair needs to jump in a big hurry. But the chair also needs to kind of model that respect as well, as does everyone else around the table. And then, as we describe in our board education certification program, the chair's role is to maintain the integrity of the board. And integrity means pulling everyone together, moving forward together, but also the ethics of what we're doing, which is a huge role. And that's why if you can delegate anything to others to help you along, it really is worthwhile. Plus, especially with the vice chair, they're essentially in training. So anything you can give them to help them kind of develop as you go along, that's great. And that adds to the continuity of how the board culture works into the future. Next. So the chair is the bridge between the organization and the directors, often between the executive director and the board. And that's an awesome role. It's a communication role. It's a kind of a support, sympathy, any kind of, being there for the staff in a way that allows the information to come forward to the board without fear of reprisal. Because if a board's going to get itself into trouble, it's because there's not the feeling of safety at the staff level to bring bad news forward. So key is the chair and being able to kind of support that and make that happen. The directors bring expertise. So part of the chair's role is, how do you draw out this expertise, this difference of opinion, this skill set around the table? When you look at everybody who's sitting here, I mean, these are, you're all brilliant minds, of course, but combine them all. I mean, this is a huge reservoir of skills and ability, intellect, communication, whatever. So the chair's role is bring that out, bring it out as best you can. How do you use these abilities and knowledge? Next slide, please. So the work plan, so you have an annual work plan, you have the agenda, which is your meetings work plan. Committees should also have a work plan that dovetail with the board's work plan. So what is the committee's role? What do they have to accomplish within their annual time frame? And how does that then support the board? The finances have to be ready in order for the board to deal with finances at a specific time of the year. Are they ready? Do they have the material? Do they know that that's their timetable? That sort of thing. If there is chit chat, and it's a fairly important topic, but not on topic, the parking lot, put it aside, send it to a committee. Deal with that at a later time, have it on the agenda for next meeting, do something with it so that you don't lose track of it, and that people feel like they can contribute and not be minimized, but still stay on agenda, still stay on your timetable, and then balance the updates and the decisions. Yep. Thank you. So here's another, you can't possibly read this, but it's another plan that is board and committees. So here's the board and its responsibilities, and here's how all the committees dovetail, how they work into this. You'll get a copy of all this at the end of the meeting, so it'll be a little easier to read. Next slide, please. All right, so decision-making is all about clarifying, and often the chair's role here is to clarify when presenting, or perhaps it's the chair of a committee presenting a motion. What's the background here? What's important here? What is it that we should be really discussing, talking about, so that we don't lose track of kind of where we need to center our discussions? And then once the decision is made, summarize that decision. So we know you're pulling all that discussion together. It's an onerous task. It really is. You have to be paying attention at all times. If you're the chair of the meeting, you're reading the room, you're looking for those people who aren't participating, you're kind of politely moving on from those people who are over communicating, but you are drawing out the essence of what the decision is about, and then you're clarifying that for everybody. Are you sure? This is what we said, this is what I heard, this is what we need to agree on. Is that what everybody agrees to? And then the minutes. So important. This is, as Esther will tell you, a legal document. And so when you are reviewing the minutes, take time to actually read those minutes. I can't tell you how many board members, it's the least of what they want to pay attention to. They just don't want to take the time. But this is your legal justification if anything happen in the future. So the wording of the minutes, especially if you are the one who's presenting a motion, or you're the one who's declaring conflict of interest or something like that, you need to take responsibility for what the wording is there and make sure that it reflects what you feel actually happened and what was there. And so how do you get that constructive discussion going? You ask open-ended questions, you draw out the quieter members, and you keep the tone collaborative. You're building on this culture of collaboration. And if you have the right people around the table, that is so much easier. There are many boards that directors are not elected. They are maybe appointed, or the interview process has not been done very well in bringing people on. And so you get people who come with single agendas, you get people who come with attitudes and anger. And it really creates a problem around the board table. It really is difficult to move things forward. So, yeah, you, from what Sandra tells me, you have a nice group of people around the table, so good on you. Way to go. Thanks. And it's concise, track the actions. Okay, that's the other thing is, you know, you make a decision. Well, then what happens? You know, is it accomplished? Are we moving that forward? You know, so what's the action on that? You need to review the progress and make sure that things are actually moving forward. And next slide, please. Yes. Oh, good. Yes. Somebody had their hand up.
Yes, I did. So I had a quick question. If you were to jump back to the previous slide for a second. So I see at the bottom it says chair gives background implications for decisions. If want to give opinion, should step out of the role of chair. So does that mean generally if the chair is moving a motion, they would hand over chairing responsibilities to the vice chair?
That is it. And when the chair is giving kind of background, it is easy for the chair to say, this is my opinion. And in fact, it's not wrong. It's not wrong. But the true purpose of the chair is to facilitate the group. So the best approach, the best practice is for the chair to actually say to the vice chair, please take over chairing this discussion because I want to be part of that discussion. Ordinarily, the chair is looking to bring in the conversation from everybody else. And often the chair will then sum it up. And at that point in time may say, and I strongly agree, I strongly disagree, or I think there's something here we're missing or whatever. But the opportunity is pass it to the vice chair to take over the role as chair. If the chair needs and wants to feel strongly about where a direction needs to go, and it doesn't seem to be moving that way with the rest of the board members. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I'd say I'd have one quick follow-up, and that is so yeah, and that's understandable. And I think I was having that similar thought process. And then I was also thinking now in the perspective of on a committee, you typically have your chairs being the primary movers of any motion. So then how can we justify it in that regard to have in committees the chairs being the primary movers and still hold and maintain discussion, while in the board meeting it's a different scenario.
And you're thinking here that at the committee level, the chair may not truly represent what the committee brought forward. Is that?
No, I'm more saying that like in committees, like typically, and this is more or less all the time, a majority of the motions are brought forward by the chair. So yes. In that case, now how do we approach that?
Then it's open to all board members, whether they're committee members or have not been on the committee, but it allows everyone, including the committee members, to continue that conversation. So there should be broad and deep discussion depending on the topic. And can you describe your concern there a little bit more?
No, so basically what it was is now, we talked about how in a board meeting, if the chair feels passionate about something, that should be delegated. The duties of chairing should be delegated to the vice chair, right? So now in a committee basis, obviously in a board perspective, the chair is not moving every motion. It's typical for a lot of people to be pushing forward motions. But on a committee level, you typically find the chair is the primary mover across all meetings of motions. And so in that perspective, it's impractical for the chair to pass over chairing responsibilities to the vice chair, because then there's no point in them chairing because they're consistently the primary mover. That's the dilemma I'm sort of looking at.
Okay. And in many boards, there's a table of motions coming forward and background material associated with it. So, motion 2.1 has a package, part of the package that is reflects 2.1. And so often there's very little or no need for whether it's the committee chair or whoever to present or talk in addition to that, unless there's points of clarification. So you may be able to avoid that kind of whole presentation discussion entirely if the package is well formulated and might save some time.
That's a good point. Thank you.
And get away from kind of it being that individual who's the center. Excellent. All right. And excellent. So common pitfalls, overloaded agendas, board doing staff work, no clear decisions, items get lost and no follow-up. And the nose in, fingers out is all about kind of the board needs to do the oversight. They need to know what's going on. They need to be aware. They need to read the reports, but it's management who carries out the operations. Somebody had a comment? Online?
I was just gonna, it was just about, we've hit the 30 minutes.
Oh, good.
Some questions happened, so like.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
I think I have one or two more slides. So let's move on. So how to avoid the pitfalls, streamlined agenda, respect the board management boundaries, evaluation. So next slide, we'll talk about evaluation. So here's a suggestion. At the end of each meeting, it's great if it's, sent out, as an electronic survey, SurveyMonkey, whatever it is. Did the meeting accomplish the agenda? Did the board focus primarily on its strategic plan and long-term goals? Was the time discussed appropriate for the topics? Was there sufficient information and materials? Did I contribute meaningfully to the discussion? Really an important one. And any suggestions for future meetings? And there's lots of other things that you could put in there, but this is wonderful feedback to the board chair. This helps in creating the agenda for next meetings. And then next one. Yeah, so preparation and focus means productivity, prioritize the strategy and mission, and then follow up. Any questions? Did yeah, and then is there any one thing you want to change for the next board meeting?
Okay, I guess if people would be comfortable with that, I know September might be slightly busier board meeting, but if we had a time sort of at the end for people to reflect, I think that would be a good thing. Other people's thoughts?
I think a survey method may be easier afterwards, just because those meetings again can get long and people kind of want to get out of the rest with other commitments. So maybe again, doing a virtual survey, the chair can share that feedback afterwards, something like that, or
the governance committee. All right, but definitely the chair needs to see it. My suggestion is if it's after the meeting, a reminder and have them all back within 24 hours, because otherwise it won't come back. So this as soon after as possible while it's fresh in your memory and there's motivation to respond. Good.
Mohammed has this.
Yeah, Mohammed.
Yeah, I heard that. It's noted. I think on the background, prior to the next meeting, we can make some form of survey that we can distribute during September, and take that. That's a very good point. So we'll work on that.
Super. Great. All right, and if other questions come up in the meantime, Sandra or I'll be kind of. If you need more tools, if there's something else you need, just let us know.
All right, thank you so much, Don. Thank you for the help. Right. And on that note, I think you're good to go. I think that's the end of that part.
Great.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming.
So what?
What's that? Oh, yes, right, yes. I apologize. Usually when someone right after, but take it. Yeah, hell out of here. But yeah, thank you so much. All right. Well, on that note, that's the end of our presentations for the public session.
We have nothing in unfinished business, so we'll be moving to new business. Starting off with 5.1, which is just a discussion item. I believe this is submitted by Arya. So Arya, do you want to start us off here? Seconder.
Awesome. I do apologize. I will be amending this on behalf of committee to make it to be resolved. So I'll be moving to be resolved on behalf of OCC for vote to look into and debate and pass if they wish. I think I posted this on the chat a couple days ago for folks to see, but they pretty much are in the spirit of the discussion. We just try to give full board options. I'll paste those in the chat.
Wait,
Yeah.
Arya, I apologize. If this is going to be a motion, my suggestion is we skip the discussion portion, move to the motion portion, which means we would need a seconder for this. Is that okay?
Sure. No
Okay.
problem.
Yes, seconded by Skylar. Okay, and now, yeah, if you could post that in the Teams chat,
Awesome.
since it is an amendment. Thanks. All right, now, I apologize,
Awesome.
sorry, go ahead.
No worries. So the first be resolved is really just to extend directors boothing. The program is ending in August. That's what the last board passed. So we just said extended until the end of the governing year for WUSA. The second be resolved is really around what the motion OCC voted on and brought forward is. We have noticed that directors who run co-op or out of the city have challenges, really engaging in things like directors boothing and many of the other opportunities that directors in the city have access to. So the committee really tried to brainstorm ideas of how we can address this and is looking to board to give us clarity as well on what they want to see. But we really settled on the idea of running adopting online directors office hours, which are very similar to boothing, but are happening on an online basis to give those folks online also opportunity to engage in the program. So it will require resources of advertisement and setup and maintenance and all that kind of stuff. But we're hoping that this program can help board members who are not in the city also have equitable access and engage with the programs that we run at OCC and other places. So that's really a base summary. And I'll let people ask questions and talk about it.
Before we go to general questions, Skylar, you were the seconder. Do you have anything? Okay, perfect. Then we'll go to Samir.
Give me a minute. I'm finding the exact reference. I'll say Arya, I believe yesterday, previous board approved it through fall semester. It is a separate be it resolved clause, but I believe they did approve director hours throughout the fall semester.
Okay.
I'm looking for the exact wording.
So- Awesome. So this just improves it through winter semester as well then.
All right. Anyone else? So I will say we allocated 10 minutes, but if we don't need 10 minutes, then we can go to the vote early. Any other comments on this? Yeah. Oh, yeah, give Rem a second. They're eating.
I just don't know what the uptake or usefulness of online office hours or online boothing would be, because I really think a big part of the reason students actually engage with the boothing is because they walk past and see someone there. I just don't think like having office hours, like being allowed to show up.
Yeah, I'll respond. I don't want to exhaust this point because I mentioned it several times, but I do think that this online version, and specifically me too, and I know other directors, when you're on co-op, it's very difficult. What's being proposed is a office hours of sorts. It's a virtual Zoom where they can join in. But I would think it's also, within our discussion to think of options to have the in-person aspect that Rem's talking about. So, real face-to-face, but with one person on a Zoom or on a camera. So I do support that. I think that there's a lot of directors who will still benefit from it, but it will maintain that face-to-face facing that Rem's talking about.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, one perspective I think that needs to be mentioned is it's not just about the directors that are on co-op that don't have a means of interfacing with students. There's the secondary aspect is that we have a large percentage of students that are themselves on co-op, right? Those students don't have a means to interface or discuss any items relating to WUSA, bring up any concerns in a sort of a face-to-face format with directors. They they can have a large disconnect. If you're talking about, external campuses that are not in Waterloo themselves, that's also another aspect we can bring in. And so these students are disconnected from us here. And so I think this, solution that's being offered up by ARIA, at least at bare minimum, it gives them the opportunity to come into a meeting and say any relevant points. Obviously, we can't be certain that it's going to be utilized, which is why I think we should first observe, trial it for 4 months, do a pilot, and then depending on that, we can see its successes. But I think it's a valuable idea that we should at least try and observe. It would bring in that whole new set of people that previously didn't have access to any WUSA means of discussion.
Sorry, Andrew?
Aria, do we have any plans on the logistics of the online directed booth thing? Like, what times is there going to be? Is it like WUSA Communications going to be doing advertising? Like, do you have any idea of the plan?
Very good question. So pretty much we were talking to Jordan and OCC will be making adjustments based on how this works, assuming the motion passes or doesn't. But the idea is that members of board would tell us when they're available and at their conveniences. We advertise that in multiple ways, which the advertisement team can figure out. And then we make it accessible so students can engage. So a lot of the staff would be putting, it's not that complicated really. It's just you could advertise it on your website. You could do Instagram posts about it. But it's up to the board when they're available. So I would be available every Thursday between 1 to 2 and I'll sit in a Zoom meeting. And the idea is if somebody wants to talk to me, they can. So the program will go through changes for sure as it gets adopted and as we get feedback about it. But yeah, I hope that addresses it somewhat.
Thank you, but Key, I hate to call you out, but if we could try to keep I know, but just because not everyone's going to be able to read the teams very easily. You put a few things some that were related to the subject, some not. If you can at least verbalize like the stuff that's related to the motion, that's okay. Your thoughts there?
Yeah, it was just repetitive, so I put it in the chat. I'm not against piloting the virtual office hours, and I'm not against doing them either. I just had recommendations on maybe other potential considerations for how we could actually look at, board directors on co-op engaging. For instance, like different times that we can do it and whatnot. Hope that's okay.
Thank you, Katie. Samir.
I will say for director hours in general, and please correct me if this is wrong, and that should be one, right? Aria, I don't believe they have been super successful in getting actual students to talk to new directors. From my experience talking to directors, there's maybe 3-4 people in the whole 2-3 hour shift talking to directors. Do you have any more information of, is this an actual useful thing that students are finding? And are we finding this because otherwise there may be an argument loss in the pilot if we aren't seeing the usage we wanted?
I'm going to pass this to Aria. I do just want to know once again, to take the topic. So if it's not anything super new that you're going to add, try and keep it. Aria, go ahead.
So I won't speak on my personal, I'll speak as behalf of committee, as I'm moving the motion on behalf of committee. Committee came to the conclusion that even though there might not be as much, usage of those programs, having them available creates that accessibility, and that is worth pursuing. Even if it's 2 or 3 members of board who use it and connect to 2 and 3 students whose problems they fix, because of the minimal resources required for a program like this, committee believed it would be valuable to pursue it. if that's was neutral way I could summarize the discussion.
I'm going to give it to Mohammed.
Last question I have, Aria, for you, it seems, is so now, assuming this motion goes ahead and we're going to pilot this out, what is the next steps going to look like in terms of when are the logistics going to be resolved and when's the target date for this to start?
Yeah, great question. So, I'll meet, and I think OCC will definitely talk to Jordan and the team to try to get it up. It's really up to, we want a program, we're handing it off to the operations team to get the program up and running. So it'll be discussions with Melissa and Jordan and the team to see when we can do it. But I'm confident sometime in the spring term, like this can come to life. Sorry, in the fall term, this can come to life because it shouldn't be too much of a, it shouldn't be too complicated. It's just, you know, Teams meetings and having the links accessible to the public.
Thank you. Iman, I did see your hand up earlier. I believe it was probably a direct response from Samir. I think you might have something valuable, so if you'd like to.
Arya covered everything I was gonna say, so I don't wanna repeat it.
Okay, perfect. On that said, I'll just remind people that, you know, I'm speaking myself here. This is a pretty like low resource allocation here, especially the both the in-person and virtual booths. Like virtual stuff is very low effort. The directors just pick up the table and the stuff that's always just set up in the office. They set it up. And for the virtual stuff, it's literally just setting up office hours and some posts. It's very simple. I don't think we need to overcomplicate things here. I'll pass it to Melissa, and then I think kind of seems like we'll go to a vote after that.
Yeah, all I was just going to say, and it sort of goes back to Arya and Samir's point, is just to be clear, if we're going to run these, that we have a goal for why. What is it that we're trying to do? If the goal is be accessible and be available for students if they need us, then I think it's not about the number and how many interactions, but that it takes time for students to know there are different ways that they can connect with board members. If it's to get feedback on specific topics and look at a certain quantity, then how we execute that may be different. So if you're clear on what the goal is for running these, then I think, as Damien said, the execution part we can definitely figure out.
Yeah. All right, now if everyone's okay, we'll move to a vote. Start off all those in favor of the motion. Second, okay, all those abstained? All those against? Oh, Mohammed, is that you abstaining? Okay, Marichini abstained.
Everything seems
Mohammed?
laggy. Sorry about that. Everything's
What
laggy
about-
on my end. I'm
Okay.
voted for.
Voted for, okay. Marichini abstains. All those, did you abstain as well? Yeah, okay, all those against? And just Rory against. All right, perfect. So the motion passes. On that note, we will move on to 5.2, review of investment policy statement. This was submitted by the ED, who is not. Oh, Suzanne is here. Okay, perfect. Right. I'm so used to you being in the room, Suzanne.
She's here, but I would give in a high level summary of
What's
it.
that?
She's here, but I'll give a high level summary of the.
Yes, if you can do that, because this is not a motion at this point.
No.
No, so this is just a review. Okay, so, yeah, as if you'd like to, with the,
Essentially provides a framework for managing WUSA's assets in a manner that safeguards the students' funds and also supports long-term investments and growth. And in addition to that, the policy tries to outline the governance and oversight responsibilities of the board, the executive director, and the investment manager, so it's clear who's doing what. And then the policy also establishes like the core investment objectives, provides asset allocation guidelines that's detailed in clause 7, and then it outlines the monitoring and reporting requirements, which would ensure transparency because it is expected to provide timely updates to the board, while the investment manager provides regular statements and annual presentations to ensure there's performance review and compliance as well. So. And
yes, so we'll go with Samir.
I'm of the opinion parts of this policy should be board policies, not ED policies. For example, monitoring and reporting, I believe, should be under the board of asking the ED to report back. I personally do. I think it makes sense for the ED policy to tell the ED to report to board. It should be the board telling the ED to any of the reporting things back. And I think high level frameworks for investing should be under the board. The nitty gritty of investment policy statement makes sense to live under AD, but high level of what board wants to our assets and strategic long-term investment in my opinion, is a board responsibility.
So so your second point, the board policy manual makes reference to,
That is for operational investments. I believe, if I believe you represent, sorry, I think I know what you're referencing.
Same thing. Sir Mohammed, is that a two or Suzanne, I assume that's a two?
Sure.
Go ahead, Suzanne.
I also would suggest that the board work plan might be a good place to have that as a place to require reporting. I think that's maybe, well, I think that's part of what that work plan's for. So that might be a good place for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I probably agree with that. New point from Skylar.
Yeah, I just have a question. What does this statement change from our current standing, like our current policies, procedures? What is new here?
so we've never really detailed the assets allocation benefits. And let me go back to it because I was trying to note points from. And so it's just to state clearly that what our permitted investments are and the risk tolerance and time allocation and all of that, because it's not that detailed in the policy manual. It just states that the ED should not invest in high risk.
So it's kind of what we're currently doing is.
Yes, it's just detailed here. That's it.
Andrew?
So the first question I have is that, for the asset allocation guidelines, it says it's just a sample, right? So like, this is not actually what the policy is, what we're doing for our investments, right? This is just like, because it says a sample allocation for strategic reserves may include. I'm just wondering on some clarity on that one.
I don't know if Suzanne can help with that bit because
I guess sort of I might end up asking a question back, which would be, I think that the general intent is to provide sort of like high level guidelines, right, of where investments would be, and then also sort of delegate some of that to our investment manager, advisor, to sort of give us some input and insight as markets change and whatever. So we don't want to potentially limit ourselves either for them to be able to do their job. So, I mean, you can lock them in if you want them locked in, but I feel like there's time and place and we're relying on somebody else's expertise in this as well. So, but.
Thank you, Suzanne. Mohammed?
Thanks, Damien. So I'm gonna put a thing, sort of a direct question to Suzanne, and I'd like to continue on with my point. And so my question is so obviously this is not a emotion item, this is more just general for discussion. And that is, now how fully flush and developed is this IPS? Is this more of what are our initial thoughts on it? Is there more to be done? Or is this sort of in a state that we're supposed to be like, okay, this is how we're looking for it to be?
I would say this is in a state for where it's open for some conversation and discussion and some feedback. So this is our first draft to take from investment policy draft and information that we received for the advisors to looking at having one for WUSA. So does that help?
Perfect.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So Damon, can I take the floor back?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so then, I mean, that makes sense. Obviously, I think we're gonna have to go through multiple iterations on this process. And so I think here would be my general comments, and that is, when we talk about ESG compliance, there's so much variation in what companies like to project. There is variations in how it's measured. There's so much to it. And I think for us to actually now go at it, we're going to have to really define some of these key objectives in our IPS so that our portfolio managers are able to go through it. And then from that, pick apart and dictate what we're trying to rule out. Right? If we're trying to rule out oil and gas, then we're going to have to be explicit about that and the means, because some companies come out and yeah, they sell oil and gas, but then they do other means to sort of make it carbon neutral by buying carbon credits. And then some ESG companies don't view that as, against ESG policies and look at it as in compliance. So that's one standing point. The second standing point I'd say is, I think it'd be useful to put in set standards. So when we're talking about asset allocation, putting in firm objectives on what our company, what our corporation is looking for. That way we have that in our general guide as to what they're supposed to target. Obviously, there's always going to be some variation, but I think we should come out and say, because that also goes to risk tolerance, right? Our diversification across investment types, and then across, the sub entities of that in terms of portfolios and equities and whatnot. At least on the oversight perspective, when we're talking about the regions of investment, we should put in that directive to say how much exactly we should be investing, as opposed to just putting in a range. I'd say those are my generally two overarching points. More specificity generally on those two.
Samir?
A couple different thoughts. First, per our AMM motion, we are bound by a few different things, including I'll put in chat right now, exact definitions of what ESG is, including risk tolerance and assets. We are bound by this, and it does include stuff like audit committee having some oversight, even though our terms of reference for that committee doesn't. Question for Esther, in terms of, for my understanding, is like, board policy 17.9.9, which is the invest one. The executive director will not invest or hold operating capital in insecure or high-risk instruments. That's relating to operational investments. We currently do not have anything in the board policy or bylaws from where on actual investments. But from my understanding of the current model, like, that wouldn't be operational. And in my opinion, and I'll love to be corrected, board would be in charge of the high level rules around investing here. Like, I don't fully understand why this is an ED policy and not a board level policy.
Sure. Well, you have that high level guidance and essentially policy to your executive director, and then you've delegated that operationally for the investments. So you do have mechanisms to be able to do that oversight, and the reporting process becomes critical then. And then you judge the reports. So you do have that oversight opportunity. Do you, as a board, want to make the decisions on the investment and therefore work with the investment advisor, which some boards do, but many boards, think that's the operational side?
Yes.
I think the piece right now is like, right now our board policy says nothing about our long-term investments. And I believe this investment we're talking about is not our operational investments, but our long-term investments. And I do things like stuff like reporting back to board. I think the details and nitty-gritty of like what we're investing in, it makes sense to be left up to the executive director. But I do think there's a conversation board should have about us setting up a policy of like the high level, as you're saying, of how investments work, high level reporting, how the ED should report back to board, because we currently do not have a policy on that. I think that should be established.
Mohammed, is that 2 or is it yeah, go ahead.
It's a 2, it relates to this point. And so what I was sort of going to say is, obviously investments, whether or not they fall under operations is one point. I think the separate point and the important point here is that it's a whole different matter. When you're talking about long-term investments, there's a maturity period. It takes time for them to pan out, and a changing world with ever-changing procedures and thoughts about how we should approach this could potentially be dangerous to any long-term vision, right? Closing out or sort of trying to change asset allocation on year to year could have very negative implications on our returns, right? And so I think to some essence, it makes sense to have us as board retain that high level oversight. And so, yeah, I agree with you, Samir, in the sense of, yeah, we should maintain that high level oversight and retain the ED maintaining like that, general delegation of management of, our investment policy in the IPS. And so I'd say then that for a takeaway point here to Suzanne more, then perhaps that can be changed so that the IPS, the actual oversight aspect and the reporting aspect can be put under our board policy manual, because I know we have a lot of gaps on what our board policy manual covers, especially if we're talking about like items like board compensation. So this would be good to update.
Thank you, Mohammed. I just want to quickly say something, is that I prefer if we didn't start doing loud noises for disagreement or agreements with any points. Don't want to create that atmosphere in the room. I think next was Roy, or is your hand down?
Nope.
Go ahead.
Still 2. I guess just clarification, because now this discussion is sort of to provide, I guess, Suzanne some potential insight coming from board. So just want to clarify your points to me are, well, when you're looking at this original document that was sent out to everyone, like what pieces do you feel, like besides the ESG piece, what pieces do you feel aren't touched upon? Because I know it does talk about like time horizon and a little bit on the other pieces that you got brought up, but I was just wondering if there's anything specific.
It really is just that definitions, the detailed definition in the AM motion, which was included in here, since we are kind of bound by that, it was kind of that thing. And then in this, and then I think, yeah, again, on the board side, we can figure out the other thing of reporting and like the other audit stuff that was mentioned in the AM motion. That's I think on the board side to figure out. But other than that, like the document makes sense from other than that.
Andrew, do you still have your hand up?
I have a one now.
Okay, I still think you're the first one, so.
Okay. So Suzanne, I think in terms of the IPS, I think something that we can improve because I think that right now we just have one statement, but I feel like the operating funds and like the capital funds, like our long-term funds, they're like, there's two different purposes, there's two different objectives, there's two different time horizons. So I feel like that's something, maybe we should have two different documents, one investment policy statement just for operating funds and like another one for the capital fund. And then the second thing is, I think that we should probably have some sort of benchmark for like how our investments are doing. And that's why I feel like we should have sort of more concrete ranges of asset allocations. So, and then that way we can actually have benchmarks so we can compare and see how well our investments are doing compared to like a stock and bond indices of like a similar composition. So I think that might be something that's useful. And then also in terms of like the reporting side, like Samir talked about, I feel like something we can implement in the policy would just be like the ED report to the board every year. Not just like on performance, but also feel like we should probably do like performance to see how we're doing compared to the benchmark that we're performing. And maybe we can add that the ED should report to the board if a severe event happened where like our stock performance, our investment performance has like fallen significantly, has dropped dramatically, like beyond just like normal market trends and conditions and stuff like that. So I feel like that way that board can have a little bit more oversight, and also that board annually like actively reviews like our performance, our investment performance, and see how we're doing.
Mohammed, that's a one. Thank you. Suzanne, go ahead. You got it. That's right. Suzanne, go.
I go, two gets me to talk faster, so I'll do it too. I'm just teasing. It's a direct one. So I think a couple of things in that, and so I'm going to try and cover them all. But I only wrote down little words, so I'm not actually sure that I'm going to get all the points, but I'll try to. The two separate pieces for what I'm going to call shorter term and longer term investments, I can see separating. I'd like to keep it into one, just to have a centralized place where we're looking for all investments. So if we need to break those because we want to have different goals and composition and standards or whatever, or asset allocation, then that makes sense if folks want to do that. In terms of benchmarks for outcomes, again, I think that's up to board to kind of set as they see investments and they look at them each year. Hopefully they don't change. I think Mohammed made the point of, we don't necessarily, ideally, we don't want to see a board change things dramatically from one year to the next, because again, we don't want to be getting out of things when the curve's down for everything, if that makes sense, like every single time we're hopping. So that is, we're sort of trusting our investment folks to read that and share that with us. And then there was one other one in terms of the reporting. I think that it does say in 9.1, it talks about portfolio performance, compliance, and market conditions. So I think that covers some, but there might be some things that you folks might not think is in that you're looking for. So we can certainly add to that if that doesn't, but I think the market conditions was one you in particular mentioned.
Okay, Samir?
I think that for WUSA, I do think like the 9 part, in my opinion, should be lived with the board policy manual of the monitoring and reporting. Just the high level and then the monitoring and reporting, I think, board can talk more about it, but in my opinion, that should live in the board policy manual.
Yeah, it should be noted that this currently this is not a motion.
Yeah.
So like EDs, for ED policies, that would have to be a separate thing.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think boards consider that over time.
Okay. Mohammed?
Thank you. So, two good things. One, just wanted to reaffirm, obviously, the one takeaway about the ESGs. I think Samir mentioned the point that we define them out in AMM, so we should try and do our best to stick to those and ensure those are clarified. And then two, and this is directed to Suzanne, and that is item 2.3, investment manager. When we say investment manager, are we talking about the portfolio manager that our investment bank will provide to us to manage the array of portfolios, or is this someone in WUSA that we intend to hire?
It is from the company that does our investments. So from like Blair that you met, and I can't remember the other gentleman's name right now.
Okay, just short follow-up, Damien, if that's okay.
Yeah, I see no other hands.
Yep. So this individual, the investment manager, he's gonna, because I remember the TD analyst saying that they're gonna provide us with a 20 cell array of different portfolio managers across the region who will then go in and based on our ESG guidelines, take in and put in a portfolio of equities, of MMFs, and of all these sort of items. And so is this investment manager going to be coordinating across all of our different portfolio managers across the region? Is that how it's going to work?
I'll say that's my expectation without double checking that, but I can certainly double check that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Right. Thank you. On that note, I don't see too much other discussion. I think I'll just say for myself, I think I second the ESG piece. I think we need a little more detail on what that looks like. I think that'll help the investors as well to understand what we're looking for. But on that front, seeing no other hands, Suzanne, are you happy with the feedback you got for now? I think we'll have to look back in the future about those benchmarks that were talked about and stuff like that. But that can be for a later discussion. Now, on that note, oh, yes, Mohammed, thank you.
I hate to come in at the end. I just wanted to say, was there any thought or confirmation in whether the audit committee could step in and have some of these discussions, especially as we refine some of the ESG wording?
Yeah, go that.
So you want to as chair.
Yeah, I guess I can talk about this. So like, because of the AFM motion, it says that audit committee is responsible for reviewing the compliance of just ESGs. Yeah, of the ESG policy. So I think that's something that audit committee can work on right now. Yeah.
I'll quickly go. Currently, as it's set out, we're in an interesting situation where the AMM, which is binding, is assigned to audit, but it is also not in the terms of reference for what audit is. So I do think we're going to have a governance discussion around what that looks like, and if we are sticking with that, it would need a change in the terms of audit to just add that. That does not currently exist, but I'll pass it to Rory. I thought it was going to be, yeah. I think that's a discussion we're going to have to continue to have. Mohammed, go ahead.
Yep. Final thing I was going to say is, yeah, I think perhaps because it's a governance related question to review, governance committee can take a shot at just discussing it out and seeing what it looked like per the terms of reference.
I think I'll just say that is within governance portfolio. It is also within board's purview to discuss governance stuff as well. It is the main job of board. So I know board is currently undergoing a very, very intense work plan thing, like work plan situation with governance reform. So you can take that, but if it doesn't fit within like a certain timeline, it is something that we can do through board itself as well. Because I don't want to compromise any of the bigger things that we're going right now. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Yeah, no, last thing here, I think, I wasn't going to bring it as part of the ongoing governance reform in the governance committee. I think it was just could be a nice simple motion that's prepared on September 25th, which is our next meeting, where we can just go ahead and have that discussion. Just a simple discussion on that.
How about then me, you, Esther, with Suzanne, we can have that discussion, just bring that for next board meeting.
Looking forward
Because
to it
I
then,
want
yeah.
to make sure
Yeah.
we've got the right situations here instead of going through GovCom itself, and it'll be a regular motion. Perfect. Okay.
Looking forward to it.
Anybody else on this? Okay. Perfect. We kept relatively close to the 20 minutes, so well done, everyone. I guess on that note, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is 5.3, which is club funding. Should be noted that this was motioned by me. Now, we did have a discussion earlier during the Capacity Canada presentation about something was deeply ingrained, like as me presenting a motion might be worth passing to the vice chair. It's not a discussion we had previous to this meeting. So I am hesitant about changing too much. Is that I would kind of defer to Remington on this?
Fine, I know. Yeah.
Well, okay, then I almost want to defer to the board. If
I think without board having a larger discussion of how we're doing this, it makes sense for now for you to keep it. In September, we can talk, like for you to chair right now in September, like do online, we can, in the chat, we can figure out, do you want to change this? How do you want to do this?
yeah, maybe through discussions with Esther as well. And then for now, we keep the same process. I hope, like, this is not the first motion I pushed, I think, and I hope call me out if I let it bias me, but I don't think it does for now. But we'll move forward as is, and we'll change if that's the discussion we have outside. Okay, so I'll give I'll give this the first motion for club funding. I would need a seconder for this motion, seconded by Rory. And so I'll give the quick rundown about what's going on. I will say that I will have actually there's a friendly amendment that I'd like to push before we move forward. So I will just add that to the chat right now. Give me a second, folks. I have to find it for my text here. Right, so I'll just give a quick disclaimer about what the friendly amendment is. It is further resolved that the Board of Directors submit a motion for the 2026 regular AMM to raise funds for this new program. You know what? Maybe let me give the context for the motion and then explain the amendment. So this is just a motion to increase the termly funding we give to clubs from the $75 to $200. It would allocate $90,000 to this pilot fund from WUSA's general reserves, and it would direct the executive director to include termly reports on club funding utilization and club training attendance for board to better understand the impacts of the increased club funding on WUSA clubs. The amendment that's been presented would also submit a motion for the 2026 regular annual members meeting to raise funds for this new program of increased club funding through student fees, with a presentation to students on the results of this pilot program, including but not limited to changes in utilization rates of the flat termly club funding. It also has be it further resolved that continued funding for the increased club funding program, forgive me for saying funding so many times, be contingent on the passing of this new AMM motion. So just more explicitly states that it is contingent on whether or not students find the value in the data for this new program at the next annual members meeting. So that kind of leaves it up to them in the end, and it would fund it in the long term instead of continuing to come out of general reserves or something of the sort. Now, Roy, as the seconder, do you have anything you'd like to add? No. Okay, perfect. So we'll go to general discussion. Thank you, Ari. Go ahead.
I just want to say this is a great amendment, because my concern was actually that of like, is it just going to be every year 90,000 out of the general fund? My only question then is, so we're going to run the 90,000 of debt this year to pilot the project. Like, I think it's a good thing to increase the funding. I'm of the personal opinion, like we might want to just like begin the program so we don't run 90,000 of debt at all, like after AMM, and I think it'll pass. I don't think anybody would vote against it. Like, So that's the only thing. But yeah, I think it's a very good amendment across the board. But I would be personally more in favor of running it after the AMM, so we have the money for it, so we don't run the debt.
All right, I can't take credit for the amendment myself. It was suggested by Rory, so thank you. It does, I think it's substantially improved the motion.
I mean, I think the key part of that AMM motion is the data from this pilot, so I think we need to do the pilot before we make that kind of decision.
Yeah, Kumar.
There are clubs that have huge surpluses, so perhaps omitting those clubs, they're not $30,000, they probably don't need that extra 150. It's just something to think about.
So I think if I can give a response here, I think my thought process on this is that we do have a few clubs who have big surpluses with a lot of clubs who don't. If we're talking about the full impact, it would be about the number of clubs as opposed to the size. So I don't think it would make a big impact.
I would say you don't need to necessarily extend the additional funding to the larger clubs that already have money.
Yes.
That could be a smaller price tag and still as impactful. Just something to think about. Does that make sense?
Yes, I will say my first, actually, sorry, go ahead, Rem, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I don't have any data to back this up. It is pure speculation, but I would think that, you know, clubs that have access to external funding like sponsorships or whatnot, probably aren't even going to use the increase in funding, just like clubs with a lot of scholarships, or not scholarships, sponsorships are barely using their 75 right now. So I don't think it's like excluding those clubs is going to make that much of a difference.
You don't apply, I don't think you apply for it. I think
It's applied to your account.
it's applied to your account. It's dropped to your account. As an expense, yeah. Sorry.
I have a point of privilege.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Kumar, your first part, I think you're a little bit far away from the mic. I couldn't hear what you were saying. So could you repeat the point you had brought up earlier?
There are larger clubs. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but I know because we sign off on check requests, we see the balance of all the clubs. So, you know, for those clubs, this would be a marginal impact for and an unnecessary cost to WUSA with the impact. You know, you may be better off giving $400 to all the clubs that actually need it, type of thing. So you may want to dig a little deeper in that one and for possible impact.
Yeah, so just a couple of things on this front. My first worry is administrative difficulties with that. I don't like categorizing what is a large and isn't a large club. I don't want to add that cost. And also I do think a broader look at what club funding is more generally, like a more in-depth look, is something that board should consider in the future. I think more time with that is necessary, but I think the goal of this so far is to keep things simple. And then if need be to a broader club, like a broader look at club funding, which I think is important. I think that should happen later, but I want to keep things simple for this one for administrative reasons.
Yeah, I just want to go to that point as well, about there being a long-term look at the system and whatnot. I think in terms of the board duties, maybe something like that is great before doing a pilot event, is having that strategic review of the club system. Because although, like Arya said, I personally agree with raising the club funding. I just think that the issues we're trying to address here are not necessarily the issues students are facing or clubs are facing. And I think that a strategic sort of oversight or report would be the first step in order for us to make a decision like this. So I know you're saying let's do that afterwards, but I think the proper procedure would be to do this before and then implement the change.
Mohammed, is that two? Roy, go ahead.
I might be passing this to Arya, but reflecting back that OCC did just have a roundtable to talk with student clubs and societies about sort of the issues that they're facing. And so I'm wondering if his hand is up to bring up some of the information that we gathered there.
Arya?
Okay, I can talk about that, sure. I was not going to say that, but okay. So OCC, and I was hoping this report will be available to you folks. I think Melissa has it now. Jordan will email it to me. Okay, well, Jordan will email it to me so I can send it to everyone soon. OCC side. The data showed that it actually clubs and societies didn't want more funding. They just wanted their funding to get into their hands sooner. Like the systemic issue is that it takes too long for funding to be dispensed, and that information isn't clear about how the process works for the club execs. So that's the key that the data highlighted there. My question is, and this is what I wanted to talk about, have you thought about actually measuring funding based on attendance to clubs events? A club that gets 50 people gets more money than one that gets like 5.
So, all right, I just, with that second point, that is a 1, which is a different thing. So I said 2 because the assumption was that it was a 2. So I just want to stick on that point and move on, because
Sure.
I do think you'd be next. I think, yes, Amir, go ahead.
He was first.
You're first.
The point I want to bring up is just an anecdotal thing about club funding is we see a lot of clubs apply to select for small amounts, couple hundred here, couple hundred there. It's often, so I think you can argue that this funding path exists. Yes, we have higher amounts as well already, but I do think that's something to consider. Like they are looking for money in different ways.
Yeah, I just want to give my 2 and then pass it to Skylar. I think would be next is, on the OCC front, from my experience at the roundtable, it wasn't that people were saying explicitly they don't want more funding. I think I would agree with you that the main issue is not club, like the amount of club funding. I think I would agree that the main issue is about speed of funding. That I would agree with you on 100%. It's just, I don't think this is to tackle the only issue or even the biggest issue. It's just an issue with the club sphere. That I think clubs are facing. It's just under resourced, especially small to medium clubs. And then Skylar, and okay.
I just want to respond to Samir's point around like people applying to SLAT even for small amounts. I will say it does happen, but it's very small relative to the total number of applications. I'm looking at like this most recent round of the applications that we got. Only 3 were for less than $200 of the almost 40 applications that we got. So at the end of the day, it's not going to have a big impact if people are, concerned that if SLAT is dealing with a huge amount of like applications for less than $200.
Mon?
I will also say I know we're reflecting on like the roundtable and kind of the main issues that were brought up there, but I mean, I don't know how many club execs were there. I will say that like personally, I've heard from outside of just that roundtable that I've had at least 5 to 7 execs come to me separately and discuss funding and request more funding. This is before the roundtable, and I did tell them to come. They didn't, but that is also a concern outside of that as well.
Samir? Wait, Mohammed, just to be clear, you're a 1, right? You're still a 1? Yeah. Samir, go ahead.
I would say, correct, Roy. I would say like talking to Jeff and knowing it, since we have 6 cycles a year, then there's like September and this fall, more likely they do it. I will say that, if we're funding them for 200 terms, 600 per year, I think you consider them as we do it. The only reason I brought that up was show there is some demand for lower item thing. There's some demand show exists. Not that there's enormous demand through SLAT, but there's some that is provable.
Okay. Ari, is that a 1? Perfect. Okay, we're back at the 1s. I think Skylar, then Mohammed.
Just a point of pursuit. I think it's Mohammed.
Okay, go ahead. Mohammed.
Thank you. So first, I just went on the WUSA clubs active club directory, and I'm seeing 161 clubs are active. So the amount proposed comes out to 250 clubs. For one, what's the reason for the gap? Are we accounting for new clubs? And then 2, and I know we talked about this, Damien, but I just want to confirm it here again. What was the rationale for the jump from the 75 to the 200? That's just the second point I want confirmed.
All right, thank you, Mohammed. And yeah, we'll try and keep confidential numbers confidential, but
I think so for the estimates that we got for the funding came from the like the WUSA clubs team. And it's like a meeting between them and Suzanne, and so that's where that came from. It's same thing with the number. It was that specific number was we came to that conclusion because we thought that would be a big enough number that might drastically change the amount of utilization, as opposed to some smaller numbers where it might the marketing might make it a little bit more difficult to actually increase utilization, because as it currently stands, the utilization rate of our clubs funding is quite low, because and there's not enough clubs that are actually coming out to the clubs training. Now part of that is at least, and I'll talk from anecdotal experience, is largely because the number is too low. So to actually be an incentive to go out. I think it was Mohammed before Samir.
Okay, thanks, David. Okay, so here's my short follow-up, and that is, now, so given that we're sort of going off the fact that we want to increase utilization, and that's why we're sort of trying to proceed with the high number, and again, that's not to discredit the high number. I think certainly there are definitely clubs that are going to need it and utilize it that we would want to fund. My more overarching point is just that, we don't have an explicit quantitative means to confirm that clubs are in need of that amount. And so my sub to that is then what's the urgency to the situation to provide this starting in the fall term? Why can't we pilot it for a single term, observe, and then make the following changes after some more of the, and again, this hints to some of the points that was raised earlier, some of the procedural changes in the background, including, trying to streamline some of the check distribution and making that entire back process faster.
I'm just going to respond to that directly. I think, I don't think putting it for one term is a very good idea. If we're trying to collect data, it takes some time to really get an idea of what that looks like. And I would also say it's not just about increasing utilization alone. It is also about better funding clubs. And I would also argue, from my experience in the club sphere, in every conversation I've had with any other club, the $75 is consistently cited as too low to kind of warrant putting the effort in. And this is I've had a long experience in the club sphere. This is not the first time this has been brought up, and I've been in this I started 2 or 3 years ago, and the funding's the same, right? So I would definitely push back on the idea that clubs don't need this funding.
But it's been the same for 13 years at least.
Samir, go ahead.
I just want to add on, in order to get that proper data, we need to run it for a little bit through the different things. Club numbers vary term to term. Club, enthusiastic term to term. So I think a year is a fair thing, and we're clearly saying in our motion, AGM, you guys get the final call if we're funding this or not.
Okay, I think that's done for that. Next up is Skylar.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask Damien, in the details of the motion, you say that this is the lowest funding or one of the lowest fundings of campus clubs in Ontario. Where'd you pull that from? Did you do you have a list of these universities and the funding?
No, it's go ahead, actually.
You can go first.
Discussions with other student unions. I don't have a specific list.
Do you have any information around other unions, student unions, and the ranges that you've witnessed?
I think Ramses.
Yeah, so Dana and I both had conferences with execs from other student unions. They're generally in the thousands range.
Yeah, well, close to 500 to 1,000 is usually where we see those numbers. So yeah. Go
I would say keep in mind societies don't really exist in other universities, so that's another reason for that. And yeah, I just want to add on a little bit of context there. To yours.
Okay, we'll go to Mohammed. I believe sorry, it's Arya. Go ahead.
So my opinion is I'm just swing a little. So I'm going to ask for a secret ballot vote on the motion. And I'm going to also bring back the conversation on the previous motion I brought up was what if we fund groups based on actual participation? So I guess it's to Kumar, do we track how many people show up to any club's events? Do we have any mechanisms to track that data?
We can.
Yeah, go ahead. It was directed to.
Can. But again, we're looking at impact. For clubs that already have money, they won't be marginal impact to develop because they can already be operating. Nothing's stopping them from putting on an event when you got money in the bank. For those that don't, those can be hyper focused and how do we get the money faster and like with less friction so they can get to work and plan the events. To make them have attendance will be kind of like you can't get an event without money, can't have money without attendance type of thing, right? So something to consider.
We're getting confused with the twos and the ones here. I think we'll pass it to Samir and then Ram.
Are you requesting, because Robert's rule requires a simple majority to do a simple ballot, so are you bringing a motion for us to do it? A motion for us to do a secret ballot?
I think from last year's understanding, the way we did it was any member requested a secret ballot. Secret ballot was not debated. It just went through. But Esther can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, Aria, that's the practice we used, but I'll just check Robert's rule to confirm what's yes said.
I believe it's general consent or majority vote.
Point of order?
Yeah.
Wait, if you're asking for a secret ballot, isn't that calling the question and doesn't that need 2/3?
No, it's not calling the question. You could still debate. It's nothing to do with.
You just changing the voting method.
Okay.
I still need to make
yes,
my
does
own.
it-
Regular
Oh,
too.
okay, yes, I'm gonna bring things back, and then we'll deal with the secret ballot question when we come to the vote, if that's okay. I don't want to create too much confusion here. Let's bring it back to the regular discussion, and then we'll get into that area. Ram, go ahead.
I agree that at some point in the future, we should look at some kind of a tiered funding. But 75 is a ridiculously low number and we need to make it a slightly more reasonable number. And I think 200 is a pretty freaking reasonable number.
We'll go to, sorry, forgive me, folks. Andrew.
So I think we're all having questions here about what method of club funding is best for best for WUSA. Well, I think something that anecdotally we all have experienced is that clubs need more funding, and I think that and I'm concerned about like the two new be it further resolves that were added, that it forces us to present a board like a motion at AMM to increase student fees for this type of club funding, even though we might not agree on the model yet. And I think that we should run a trial. We should gather the data to decide what type of model we want to present at the AMM. And I think that the last two lines obligates us to do so. So that's why I want to motion to amend the motion to remove the last two be it further resolves.
Andrew, I just really quickly, if it's okay, the intention of the amendment was not to lock it in. It was to just have a motion that would fund it, like fund the program. So if it's okay, can we do a friendly amendment to just change the wording so it might not feel like it's locking into this specific type? I would be
Okay.
that because that's the intention was just it would be funding it.
Okay. The way I read it, it sounded like we're locking in this new program for an AMM motion.
It actually doesn't. It says raise funds for this. Oh, it does say this new program for, let's say, raise funds that compensates for the new program that would.
Compensates for a new program. Yeah.
Yeah. Can we, Esther, would that wording work? A new program? No worries.
Can you repeat it again?
Yeah, so it would change the first one from Board of Directors submit a motion for the 2026 regular AMM to raise funds for this new program of increased club funding to raise funds for increased club funding. That works. Okay. Can we do that on friendly, Rory? Yes. Whatever hurts. All right. So it's just raise funds for, does that kind of?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, we're going quite long with this, but we will continue. I think it's a worthwhile conversation. Mohammed?
Thanks, Damon. So I guess I wanted to voice 2 points. One is that, I looked into sort of what you were saying, Kumar, about, just general inflation, right? And so if, the club's fund hasn't been changed the last 40 years per an inflation rate, we'd be looking at a number right now of $187. So from that means of just general justification, which many organizations use to justify fee increases, that number matches sort of the 200 that we're targeting. And that is sort of one way to put it. Now, I will still say, and I will still voice a concern on the background. I know there is plenty of justification as to why this motion is being put forth and why we want to do this pilot. But I'm still going to voice some concern surrounding like just the general infrastructure we have. Like people who are forming new clubs have issues getting those clubs approved. We might see an overslot of new club applications. My question is, how are we going to be prepared to work with that? Is there any plan that's being communicated via Brian or via perhaps Melissa on what the plan would be when this goes through, based on now we might expect more club applications?
Yeah, guys, I do want to just re-center things a little bit here because we are having two discussions in many ways, and I want to make sure we're on the right. We're having the discussion that's at hand. There is a discussion that you can have around changing the club funding schemes. And if that's something that we want to have, that's okay. The discussion we're having today is with the motion at hand, which is increasing from 75 to 200. If we want to have a broader review that does not block this, I just want to make sure that we're working within that context. Okay.
Point of information.
Yes, Mohammed.
Yeah, no, I recognize the need to keep the conversation centralized. And again, I'm not sure if this point was sort of directed against sort of the conversation that I was heading. And just in that case, I will say the relevance of the surrounding organization to make up for the loss, make up for the change in amount. Like we have to analyze variables, right? There are variables that impact the changes we're making, and we have to ensure the structure within that is suitable for whatever we're putting forward, right? If the changes we're making don't have the necessary backbone for those changes to go up, then something has to be discussed, even though technically it's not in scope of the motion.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. I think next is Maricini.
Yeah, I just had a couple questions regarding this motion. Like, I know we've amended it to like friendly and whatnot, but I just was wondering, before presenting the motion to board, have you considered all interventions towards club funding? Like, were there any other options that you considered before just increasing the funding? Like, did you think of any other plans, maybe considering helping clubs create more donations or sponsors rather than just going straight to the club funding increase?
Guys, the answer is that WUSA is currently working on many other improvements to the club system, including club bookings and other stuff. We've had the conversation around possibly relooking at clubs training as well. A lot of these things are longer term changes. So the answer is kind of yes, in the sense the organization and as a whole has been looking at these improvements. I think as a board and as president, I was trying to focus on where we're missing. So that's where that was from. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess. Okay, then I'll just go on to the next one then. You mentioned a year-long timeline. Does that timeline just remain as year-long until it's amended at the AMG, or is it you think it's just a test trial for now, or is it after it does get them would you thinking of?
Yeah, so the way the motion is formatted is it would be a year-long program, and it would be, the continuation will be contingent on an AMM motion. That would be created through this motion. If that's it. Excuse me if that answers.
Okay. Thanks.
Next is Skylar.
Final. Okay, first off, I think I agree with Mayor Chi's points full-heartedly, and I think that there's bigger issues here. But my question is really, well, not really, it's a statement, but I think that the pilot program is also concerning. It's quite frivolous when we know that students, when they go to AMM, are not going to reject, even if utilization rate changes at 0. Let's just say in a hypothetical situation, it does not go up at all. Students are not going to vote against having that increase to $200. So the way we have it set up makes it seem like, oh, you know, whether or not this goes good, students are going to choose to really voice their concerns on the effectiveness of this pilot program. But regardless, it's going to pass either way, and we know that. So I think that the way we have it structured as a fail pass test is not designed properly to see how this pilot will actually function and if it will function with its purpose in mind.
So I'm next in line. Iman hasn't spoken very much. I'm going to pass it to her first, and then we'll go back in order.
Sorry, Damien, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think after we present the pilot project at the AMM, is the goal not to then take money out of increased student fees so I think that would be the incentive is if there was no, if the club fees were not seen as, being utilized or working, then I wouldn't see students wanting their own fees to increase if they weren't actually being utilized. So I think that would be the incentive to either continue or to not.
There's one.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just disagree. I think that it's no matter what it is, they're still going to want $200. I don't think and that the fee increase would be large enough for it to be a concern. But
okay, for it to go back in order, then I think the argument essentially you're making is that students will see the value in the increase in fees. So I think the argument here is that yes, I do think it would pass. To be honest, I think it'll pass. That's part of the reason why I think it's going to be worthwhile to bring this.
can I explain what my point is though?
Well, wait, and then I'll pass it back to you. The argument that we're making here is that I do think this is a popular program that students will see the value in. I think the utilization rate is just one out of many things that students will consider. I don't think it's the be all end all if it goes up or down. I think it's also about resource and whether or not they think it's helpful for clubs. I just think it's a piece of data that people the reason I think it should be presented isn't because I think they should only accept it if it goes up. It's because I think it could be valuable information if it goes down or goes up or anything like that, right? I just think it's more valuable information that they should have. It was kind of directed at you, I guess, the question. So
I just think that strategically, these are the issues, and if there are greater issues, then we should be considering those before we do something like this. And I don't think that having the pilot, the way it's structured, is an effective way to measure that utilization as an incentive because it just goes against itself.
Okay. Who up there is a 2? I think Rem's next anyways though. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, if the increase in funding isn't big enough to discourage students from passing the motion to raise club funding, then the club funding is worth the increase in fees, therefore we should do it.
No. Is anyone up there too? Okay, come on, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Rem's point. And also I think regardless, I think relatively as a board, we're kind of on the same page that $75 is way too low. So if it passes, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't know that anyone's really I think even 200 is too low, but we're at a point where we're trying something out. So I don't think it being a thing of it's going to pass no matter what is necessarily a bad thing.
Is this a new point, a new point you're making?
I was going to clarify my point, but
then go ahead.
Yeah, my point at all is not that students don't want this money. I clearly just illustrated that yes, students want this money, and that's why it's going to pass even if there was 0 increase in utilization rate. I'm not disagreeing with anyone. My point is the format and way we have it is not an effective way to measure what our goal is. Our goal is to see if this is useful or not. We know it already. Why don't we just incorporate this already? there's no point of having a pilot if we're the idea is like, oh, maybe it won't, maybe they won't increase, maybe they won't want it. We already know a decision. Maybe there is a specific issue that we can focus on to implement into this project, this pilot project, so it could be more effective to what clubs actually need. Maybe a greater issue.
If I can just one more time, I think, because I see no other twos, I think the main goal is I don't want to overcomplicate things and overburden the the WUSA clubs team, and bring it to the AMM will help with both just the straight up funding for the money and administrative support to assuming or we see success and that that we might have more club demand and we might need more administrative support to support that. A lot of that will be helpful for us to kind of measure out and project like how much we're actually going to need. So I do think this data is very very helpful, but I do I understand there's some desire to kind of amend it to make things more complicated. I'll just ask for the sake of simplicity of administratively, we keep things simple. And then if we want to do anything more complicated, we can do that in a broader future review. That's all I'll ask, is that if we try and keep this motion simple at least. I think with that, I'll pass it on.
Awesome. So Al Kadman really showed, I think we all are in agreement. It's a bandage solution to a more systemic challenge. And I think in another board meeting, we should definitely have a discussion, or a committee needs to have a discussion. So, maybe baking that in so we can talk about this more.
Melissa?
I was just going to say that, on the discussion around other opportunities to improve the club system, I think those are well noted and understood. I think we've seen them in the long range plan. The campus or student engagement team is building up its staff to help support that. And so, we're currently working on hiring for the area manager student groups role, which will have somebody with more time and strategic oversight to dig into the systems for clubs, services, in our different student group areas and try and identify where we can work through these. So I just wanted to note that that's not a secret. I think it's been prioritized. The team knows that it is important. Now trying to get the staffing and the pieces into place so that we can dig into that next. So I'd say, they're certainly two different topics, but to note that feedback has not been lost. It has been heard, and it is on the roadmap to look at how we can do that. I just don't think overall we're set up to do that and bring that plan back right now. So trying to do what we can in the interim, obviously some small things, as you folks know, in the last year or so to try and address some of the things we know we've heard regularly. But I wouldn't say anybody on the team would say we think that that's in the shape that we want it to be, and that this dollars is going to solve all the club's problems. So I just wanted that to be noted and known. It's been prioritized. The team knows it, and we're looking to put people in place to start to address those things. So just wanted to speak to
that. Perfect. Mohammed?
Thanks, Damien. This question is sort of directed to Melissa. So I think, I agree with everything you said there. I think my short follow-up would be then what is the timeline then we're going to forecast to see some of the structural changes? And that is, in my opinion, relevant to the discussion at hand, because I think they should in some essence and will in some essence work hand in hand.
Sure. Since some of those are maybe HR details, I don't know if we can talk some of them more potentially confidential, but I think overall we're doing some hiring for that area manager role right now. We have another club's support role that we're looking to hopefully get up soon. And once those positions are in place and trained and can start to work on that bigger plan, then hopefully we're going to be able to address that. So call it 6 months to a year where folks are, up to speed on understanding the systems and how they work, and then hopefully be able to have a plan in place for what that's going to look like. So I would say, probably not much in a big way before 6, other than people to help move things along coming sooner. We're hoping to have those roles in place within the next month to 2 for both of those positions, hopefully, and then sort of start to be able to have them understand and learn the systems, and then be able to dig into what the plan is and how to prioritize it moving forward. And obviously part of that will be making sure we have the information to know what are those priority areas and in what order. So obviously some discussion with those groups if we don't already have some of that research from some of the recent stuff we've asked clubs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Samir.
Well, question, Damien.
Yes.
When we say year long, does that mean until next September or next May? If it is till next September, how is it gonna work if it's allocated or not allocated? AGM.
Yeah, so it would go until end of next summer term, so next spring term, apologies. So if it's,
Could we have that clarified in the motion?
I mean, it's,
Yeah,
it's a year.
The minutes, I guess it's fine.
Yeah, it's,
The minutes is fine. Just so it's going down someone.
yeah, I think I think it's fine. I think that's a reasonable interpretation of the
Yeah.
motion. But yeah, it would just go, and then if the AMM doesn't, they don't approve, it wouldn't be renewed. That's kind of how I would interpret
It's
it.
only for that summer term.
Yeah.
And then canceled. If not, it would continue in the fall and winter using that funding from the.
Yeah, it would remain. consistent.
Yeah, okay. Makes sense.
I will say Skylar's gone to the washroom, but he has told me what his vote would be. But I see Kumar, is that a hand or?
My last small tidbit, and then I'll leave it with you folks genuinely. So I just did probe a little bit. There are more than 100 clubs with more than $1,000 balance currently. Take it with what you want, so that they have money. So there, if you folks are trying to get impact here, and it's not much, it's a filter for us, and who gets the money or who doesn't, like a dollar amount, maybe better giving $400 to the bottom of 100 clubs than the clubs that already have a balance, but our 100 clubs have a balance of 1,000 or more.
I'm really scared of people gaming the system, to be honest. As a fear line of like, also the incentives we're giving of like them not fundraising or lying. I think for this pilot year, we do 200 flat. When we come next year to AGM, we get those deals, we figure it out. I'm just scared of the incentives. Again, I think we should have that deeper discussion here, and we will have that deeper discussion here of how it's gonna work in the future. But I think we let it pass as it is now.
Andrew?
Kumar, I know you don't normally do clubs, but like, do you think it could be because we're in like spring term right now? Like less people on campus, less events, like that's why they're like keeping more money and not spending as much, or?
Suzanne will speak to this one more, but the club surplus has been growing. That those are contributed by the top 100 clubs. The bottom 100 clubs don't have money. The top 100 clubs have a lot of money. So it's like serve, right? We want to serve to the millionaires, right? Type of thing. Imagine it like that, right?
You don't think it's like inflated because we're in like a spring term?
Mark.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna pass this to Dan here.
What was it, two? Oh, sorry. I think not much, like, that was just from growing.
Yeah, I think it is Suzanne. Go ahead.
There you go. I got my two in again. Couple of things from that. Well, actually, ideally, you folks, if you're going to do a pilot, don't change the system. Very difficult for you to measure the impact if you change other elements. So that would just be my suggestion. If you're looking at changing from 75 to 200, ideally, I think you keep the rest of the system consistent so that you're able to measure the impact when you're looking at whether you keep it going or not. And then the rest in terms of active and that would be something we'd really need to look more into to be able to answer effectively. So I won't guess on that one.
Yeah. Side of that, I don't actually see more discussion. Aria, are you, sorry? Suzanne, I think just forgot to put her hand on. Okay. So, Aria, do you still feel like a secret ballot is needed?
No, I'm not gonna withdraw it. Yeah, let's just do it. I'm gonna request it.
Okay, okay, so, second, I'm just reading, Esther's description. Okay, Samir, you object to the secret ballot? So a majority would be required for it to pass. So we'll go to a vote. All those, in favor of a secret ballot? Okay, that's 3, all those abstaining. Oh, wait, sorry. Oh, is that?
I'm proxying for Rory, so he votes yes.
Okay, thank you. So that's I saw that's 4.
I'm not sure. I've never read your bylaws, but
It's right now.
proxies are generally reserved for annual general meetings rather than. meetings.
Okay.
Our bylaws don't allow directors. It doesn't make that exception. It's just members.
Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry about that. So that's.
They're cheating as well.
Yeah, I see it. Is that your hand up or that was you as well, right, Fred? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those against? I mean, all those abstaining, apologies. All those against? 3, 4, 6. So the secret ballot fails, so we'll go to a regular ballot. Excuse me. And are we good for a vote? Right. All those in favor of the motion? 2, 3, 4, 8. All those abstaining? So we have Skylar and Maricini abstaining. All those against? I don't know if anyone's left. Maricini, I assume, yeah, okay. So the motion passes with 2 abstentions and everyone else in favor. And we can now finally move on to 5.4, which is recommendation to make some student service fees optional for satellite campus clubs. This was submitted by Arya on behalf of OCC. I will need a seconder for this. Mon, is that you seconding?
No, I'm just gonna say I'm gonna head out. I can't, it's like 4:30, so I'm
Yes,
really
yes,
tired.
so go back.
I will watch the rest of the recording. Okay, good night,
Thank
guys.
you, Mon, for
Bye-bye.
coming in from so late. Thank you.
Okay.
So I'm gonna need a seconder for the motion. Thank you, Skylar. Arya, would you like to motivate?
Yes. Alrighty. So this is the other thing OCC passed. I actually have friendly amendments that I would like to make to this that are not from the committee, so I can make it friendly, but I will be motioning to amend it. But I'll just quickly explain what the issue is, so we understand what the issue is before I make the different be resolved that I want to move forward with. The issue is that students who are on satellite campuses oftentimes don't have access to a lot of the facilities that they pay fees for on main campus. I think an example that was brought up at committee was that things like athletics. So if you're in Stratford or Cambridge, you're still paying the athletics fee, the gym fee, but you're not here, so you can't really use the gym. So OCC really wants more research into what are the concerns of folks who are in our satellite campuses and how can we move forward in a way that ensures we're aware of those and we're acting upon those concerns. So the 2 resolves that OCC recommended are stated there for you folks. One is to task the executive director to speak to athletics and all the other departments to figure out, this is the problem. People pay fees and they can't use facilities. What can we brainstorm as a solution and report to the board? And the second one is to create opportunities for directors to visit satellite campuses and do consultations with students. So that's that. And I'm going to share my personal opinion. Not to speak too long. So the challenge is that these auxiliary fees are controlled with ESSEC. So these be resolved don't really solve the issue or don't even allow for real big results. So I would like to actually propose these be resolved instead, which I'm going to paste in the chat, instead of the standing be resolved that I think actually resolve the issue a little bit better. I think they are as followed. Okay, copy. Sorry, folks. Here, paste. So these are not from OCC, these are from me personally and require an actual, but this is what I think would be better. And I'm going to end my speaking turn here.
Is that friendly, Skylar?
Yeah.
Okay, let's give it a second to read and we'll take some comments.
Do I still,
What's that?
do I still have my speaking order or no?
We're just giving a chance to read. It'll be your speaking order. I don't know if you want to kind of explain what the amendment is, and then before we
Sure.
start going?
Yes, yes. So the first one, be resolved, instead says that instead of the executive director, it asks the president or their designate to contact with the satellite campus student societies and talk to them and see what their problems are, and work with them collectively to collect relevant student feedback. Now, the second one is be further resolved that if the findings after president talks to these societies pursues changes, the Students Service Advisory Group, which is SAC, conducts further research and develops actual recommendations of how we can address the issue. Then we further resolved then that the board be included in consultation efforts, including any planned satellite campus visits. So if we ever go to satellite campuses, members of board are also available to come and are offered the opportunity to have those discussions. So I hope this addresses the cause and doesn't deviate too much from the previous be resolved, but in a way that makes it a little bit more practical. That was my hope as a compromise.
Thank you, Arya. Skylar, you have your.
Yeah. I mean, Arya already basically said everything, but I would just reiterate that, we know conversations with SAC are going to continue, and this is, something that we're working on and it's part of our work plan and everything. But this simple it's just a report, it's really looking at, in the meantime, what's the options that are available, because it's really speculative right now. So I don't want board to see this as a very cumbersome task, as it's not meant to be that way. And the way it's written right now is in collaboration. So it's a lot more of a, I don't know, I can, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a point here, and because I want to check about the amendment and if that's legal, because WUSA does not run SAC. So this is kind of a question about the wording here, because I understand the motivation, but WUSA does have several members on SAC. I don't know, actually. I think this is a question for Esther in a sense of would the wording of this be okay for just encouraging WUSA to advocate for SAC to do that? Or maybe it's worth just a friendly amendment, so it's WUSA would advocate as opposed to.
It's better it's amended to reflect that.
Yeah. Is that okay that we can do something like that, Arya?
Yeah, that's completely okay with me. I would also say if we want to hear from Merchini, because this issue was brought up before originally as well. And if she wants to add, but I'm okay with that. I think sounds good.
Yeah, can we do an amendment would be the student WUSA advocates for SAC for the student advisory. So essentially just before the Student Services Advisory Committee, we just add WUSA advocates for it then to, yeah. That works. Is that all friendly? Skylar? Okay. On that note, I think we can get back to regular conversation. I think Rem's first.
Yeah, I just wanted to, that was the second point I wanted to bring up, but the first point that I wanted to bring up is that I agree that this is better a conversation for the president to have the societies.
Samir?
I will say, and actually, this was Melissa last year, with the athletics report, I don't know if you know, does it include stuff? I know athletics report was a lot about, those student services, but did it include certain questions or information on the satellite campuses? Because that information could be very valuable in these discussions.
Like, good to respond to that, Damien? Yeah, good.
Go
Okay.
ahead,
No, that's okay. So I can't say 100%, Samir. I'd have to go back and look. I think we do have data around the number of folks who filled it out that would have been from the satellite campuses, and we can therefore pull out what their answers looked like to some of those general questions, that how that might differ from students who were on main campus. So I think there's some. I don't think we asked exclusively if you're on a satellite campus, but I can go back and check and definitely let you know. That one is not as top of mind for me, but there are definitely folks from those campuses that filled out the data, so we might have some, but just probably not 100% specific to what we'd be looking for here.
Samir?
So maybe then, when after Damien gets all this information, you can also get the information you, Melissa, from this report, and when he's eventually getting all the information, if he does come to board and says we're advocating SAC, we can have that information in there in that pile of data we're using to drive that advocacy.
But yeah, for sure. And I think just to add on to that from a broader sense as well, I know OCC has prioritized an RSP around student services in general. So as we talk about, you know, what are the reports and usage and guidelines of potentially creating some consistency for the reporting we might want to see from SAC, which I think is another sort of piece of this. We could look at that satellite campus element potentially as a part of that on the broader issues. And then again, look to do some targeted stuff with the satellite campuses for this specifically, because I think athletics is just one example of areas that satellite campuses have, I'll call it, potentially different usage rates from a lot of different services than students who are on main campus. So if we kind of broaden the scope, look at the research component of it, which I think we're already starting to do a little bit, and conversations have been happening about SAC, and then digging into those specifics that those satellite campuses specifically feel either that they're not getting value from, or, you know, is cutting fees really the only part we could advocate for, or is it that they want access to those things on their campus? And so really what we should advocate for is more service, or finding a different method of service delivery. They might be willing to, again, for example, pay the same or more to have access. So I think that's the other thing, is not just necessarily looking at reduction of fees, but what is their interest in that level of service. So I think there's a bigger, broader scope here. And as the university is looking at budget cuts, which is, I think, one of the reasons that, you know, OCC and us as a group have been talking about prioritizing understanding student satisfaction and need and interest within these different services, is that we may be asked to step into some of these places or advocate accordingly, as the university has to make decisions on where money goes. So I think having that broader scope for this as an avenue for that makes a lot of sense.
I think on that note, just the two, because that's a one moment. Yeah, if this motion passes, the way I kind of go about this conversation is a lot more around like, hey, one, like, what more could we do? I'm happy. And then like, if they present like some broader issues with like that can't be solved, then, or they present to me like that they'd like to see a reduction in fees, that's how it will go. And that's kind of how I'm thinking to kind of work that conversation, because it is possible they just do want more service as opposed to just giving up on this kind of thing. Mohammed?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of bring the board into a conversation that happened, I mean, a couple months ago at the Engineering Society. Damien, you'll know about this. I think you were there. We spent a lovely couple hours talking. I'll explain the relevance. It's briefly relevant.
I just want to make sure that we're not talking about anything confidential here.
That, to my knowledge, that meeting was not, there was no confidential session in that meeting.
Okay.
We were in public session. Yeah. Well, I will say though, I mean, I think it's nice that you mentioned it. I'm going to stray too far in getting into the details, but I think what I'm going to briefly, you know, overarching say is that there was discussion on utilization of sort of the services NSHLC provides with the School of Architecture being under the Faculty of Engineering. Not just like from what I just checked online, feel free to correct me, anyone here, if I'm wrong, but apparently the School of Architecture and obviously the Faculty of Architectural Engineering are both under the Faculty of Engineering. And so, again, maybe like that's what I just checked online. I could be wrong. Now, essentially, just the discussion at hand is like, how do we look at now the fee designate, given the fact that they don't benefit from the direct student services, such as like the maintenance of poets, which is like the student lounge that's in CPH. So it's just about, I think the conversation we're having at hand on the board table is relevant to just setting the precedent of how we approach these sort of items regarding our satellite campuses and regarding fee distribution. That's just what I wanted to say. And I think we should use this as an opportunity to help set it, because we're in that unique position. We're able to do that fee setting and assist with our societies in that.
Anyone else? Or otherwise, I think we are reaching kind of the end of the allocated time. Okay. Cool. With that being said, we are moving on to ratification of select bylaws. So this is submitted by Samir. I would need a seconder. Seconded by Skylar. And yeah, let's.
Sorry, point of order. Did we pass this motion?
Oh my God, I apologize. I forgot it was an actual motion and not a discussion item. So I apologize. I'm also thinking of the presentation that's coming up. Okay, so with that being said, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor? Is that unanimous?
I do believe that is unanimous.
Yeah, okay. It is unanimous then. And we can now, thank you for the cat, Aria. Move on to 5.5 ratification of SLEF bylaws. And seconded by Skylar. Would you like to motivate?
Sure. So with some changes to SLEF this year, SLEF does have an independent board of directors under the university, which we have a good number of seats on. With some good governance practices and some slight changes for governance Esther and me worked on, the SLEF board of directors passed some changes, moving a lot of the responsibilities for SLEF away from the WUSA board of directors to the SLEF board of directors, and a bunch of other tiny quality of life changes. Under the old constitution, which follows the old WUSA governance structure, it does require Students' Council, which powers now under the WUSA board of directors, to ratify any bylaw changes. So until we get the constitution updated with the university, of the university's board of governor, it does require the WUSA board of directors to ratify any bylaw changes passed by the SLEF board of directors. Happy to answer any questions.
Skylar? Okay, you're good. We'll go into open discussion then. Who would like to start? I'd expect questions here.
I expect a question with
Mohammed, go ahead.
I had a quick question. Samir, you might have covered this in your opening statement. I apologize if I missed it. Just really quickly. Now, I went through the bylaws and I didn't see any mention about WUSA having to approve amendments to SLEF's bylaws. Is that part of the constitution?
Incorrect. That is not under the
Okay.
bylaws. We are working with the university to update the constitution, which would then remove that requirement.
Okay, so small follow-up, Damien, is that all right?
Yeah, no one knows.
Thank you. Okay. Technically two. Okay, perfect. So then that answers that. Then my follow-up is, now I see a lot of mentions of sort of weaving out the WUSA's overlap into SLEF. Is that now like a goal we're seeing, is to make SLEF more or less fully independent? And if that is a yes, now what does that mean for the position of chair, which is an appointed position per the board?
So for some historical context, SLEF was mainly a committee under Students' Council, was the way it operated, with a board being separate. So board was separate, but its funding committee was under Students' Council. The idea here really is to make sure we don't have to keep coming back to the WUSA board of directors here, with us having a majority of seats on the SLEF board of directors and it technically being a university committee, the way it's set up right now. It makes sense to have it choose own decisions. It would have the same implications as SAC, URC, like other university appointed committees where we're appointing people to this university committee. There are some questions bringing right now of the exact legal consequences of that committee and if there's fiduciary there, but we're figuring that out with the university right now, of any details about that.
I'd like to pose one last point of information, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
Just what is the composition of SLEF board? I'm not a fully expert in this.
So right now it is 3 WUSA directors, the executive director, associate provost students, and then the board, along with the provost, who doesn't attend actually, but and then up to 3 of the 4 at-large / alumni seats who are appointed by the existing board directors. There is some weird stuff where it does mention, BPOF or old structure, because the constitution is old. We are working under a new structure by fitting people into those old roles, like we do with SAC or USC, where I've taken on a position as vice president of operations and finance and stuff like that. And those are the voting members. Then we have we have a governance team as non-voting assistant members.
Okay. Well, seeing no other conversation, I guess we'll move to the vote. So we'll start with all those in favor of the amendments. or it's a ratification of the new bylaws, but 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. Okay, all those abstaining? Is that you abstaining or? Okay.
I think my
so-
laptop's a bit confused today.
Okay. Not abstaining. All those against? Is that an abstention or what's going on? It should be noted he's in Lebanon. Okay, in favor. Thank you. Perfect. So it is unanimous in favor then. And on that note, we are moving on to general reports. Oh yeah, it's okay. So we'll start off with the executive director report. So that's you, Suzanne.
Thanks, Damien. I'm not going to say too much about the public one. I just will note the survey and research plan is both in the Teams files as well as a link here. Just being aware of the fact that it's a very, I think Melissa used the word ambitious, so cognizant of the board as we continue to look for that team to provide the org with research that folks may be needing to make some decisions of making some changes. So I'll just highlight that quickly. The last thing, I guess, being that we've Esther was good enough to register our WUSA's business name, so we're good till 2030. So thank you, Esther, for that, as well as the governance manager role will be, or probably is posted already. So we're hoping to have someone in place probably mid to end of September.
Perfect. That's exciting to hear about the name. I see Samir first.
Melissa and Suzanne, I'm sorry to ask this. With our AGM motion with the lounge plan, it does require us to send out feedback after January. I was telling Kumar about this today. We might have to incorporate asking for feedback on the lounge plan and what's in the updated final renovation there. I just wanted to alert you guys to that because we are bound by AMM to have consultations after January 2026 on that.
Okay. Thanks for highlighting it.
Yep.
Thank you. Aria? Oh, sorry, Melissa, would you like to respond? Well,
That's okay. I was just going to say, no, thanks for noting. And I think between that, potentially the last motion we just passed that might have research implications, as do other things as we go. As Suzanne said, we may have to come back to the group then and or through OCC and have those discussions for priority.
Aria?
Awesome. There's a lot of good things in this report, but I do have to highlight the concern I had last time as well. If we can't get someone for orientation to do a concert, and frankly, we don't even need to have a concert, but the expectation for our members needs to be set. So I'm of the opinion we should be refunding people the money we took because if we can't deliver, like that's the opinion I hold. Yeah.
So yes, thank you. Thank you, Aria. We actually have some updates on that in confidential. So I just want to say it is a discussion that we are having in confidential session. Okay, perfect. Anything else here? Okay, perfect. Great. Thank you so much, Suzanne and the team. I guess next on the docket is me and my report. As usual, my public reports a little bit shorter. So we'll start with Bill 33, the roundtable we had. The opposition, the Ontario government opposition reached out to us about helping to host a roundtable on post-secondary education. We had people from UW's administration, Conestoga College, Laurier, their student unions as well as the WUSA presidents there as well. Funded to be actually a very productive roundtable. That roundtable was private. A press conference was then held after, where Mark, Peggy, and Catherine spoke. Those are MPPs. And then I spoke at the end on the crisis facing education, the importance of student democracy, calling attention to Bill 33. I also finished the speech off by mentioning that our doors remain open if the current government wants to hold a meeting just like that one. At this point, that we haven't had any MPPs or members of the government commit to meeting with us. But yes, our doors remain open if they would like to. If it's okay, the societies one is short, I'll just go that and we'll take questions. On the societies front, we had our COPS meeting, committee of presidents, for those it's not meeting with COPS, where it was decided that WUSA would begin to facilitate termly sports tournaments between the different societies. It was voted that we would be holding a dodgeball tournament for the fall 25 term. So that's very exciting. Usually something that the societies would do themselves, like every once in a while, kind of sporadically. But after conversation with Ryan and like the rest of the societies, it was decided that to keep things going consistently, it would be WUSA who would help organize so that also smaller societies can get involved. Yeah, Skylar, you had a.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead.
Just a question, for Bill 33, I know that you mentioned this report, we had this event, but you've also mentioned there's been other advocacy with other MPs and MPPs. Like who have we reached out to, who have we spoken to, and specifically what parties?
So we've reached out to MPPs from all parties. Currently, yeah, actually, this is probably a better question.
So we've reached out to all local MPs essentially. When we sent in our submission, we sent a copy of it to all local MPs and every party's minister / shadow minister of cures. We had a meeting with MPP Peggy Sattler, who is the NDP and cures critic. We had the roundtable with the NDP folks. Jess Dixon from Kitchener's, one of the Kitchener ones. Her staff responded asking for more details. David sent those back and we haven't heard from them yet. That's it.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Awesome. Next would be Remington.
Oh, already. Okay. I did mention in the chat that the version that's in the drive is slightly outdated, but there's no big changes. Damien and I met with the new interim provost on his second or third day in the position. We shared our LRP annual plan and bomber plan. He seemed pretty excited about the bomber reopening. Lots of WUSA stuff going on at the moment. We also met with the mayor of Waterloo and the chair of Waterloo region. Both of them reiterated budget constraints next year, and stressed that, if there's something that we would like to see in the budget, we may have to advocate on it. I was in Calgary for a week for CASA's Polystrat conference. More on that later. WUSA, you don't need to know about all of the suffering I've been doing with the policy paper, but there is a survey link there for how deferred maintenance affects student experience, which is part of the paper that we're writing. Please go fill that out and share it with people. And they will be here on September 17th during the Campus Life Fair, and they'll be boothing at the fair and also meeting with our research and marketing teams. The CASA conference went really well. We decided on advocacy priorities and work plans for the year and elected committees. I was elected to the National Advocacy Committee, which is really exciting, and there will be some mini campaigns throughout the year that we'll probably be participating in. We'll figure out what that looks like exactly in September, but I'm really excited for that. Also, technically, anyone can be a non-voting member on CASA's committee. So if any of you guys are interested in that, let me know. It's a little late in the year to be joining them, but it's not that late. CASA is also doing campus visits in the end of August, early September range. So they will probably also be here around same time as WUSA. I did suggest that as a date that would be good. So if any of you guys want to check them out at the fair, that would be a good opportunity. The Advocacy Positions Committee has been going really well. I'm very excited about APC as always. We invited the task forces to come to our meeting on July 30th, and they gave us a lot of updates that were not previously publicly shared. lots of updates about how the implementation has been going. There's been some changes to that. But generally, things are going pretty well, I would say. One of our, some of the big concerns that I just sent back to the task forces today is the lack of WUSA representation and consultation on the task forces themselves, the lack of communication with WUSA in the implementation process, and the lack of just any kind of transparency and changes in the implementation process. So we've sent those back, and they've also said they'll get back to us on how students were selected for the task forces. And because this meeting happened at the very end of July, we decided we'll share a public update in September, just so that more people actually see it. Yeah, this thing's really matter. It's in there if you want to read it.
Questions? That's exciting. Okay, so on that note, that is the end of our public session. So we are going to be moving into confidential. Do we need a mover? I can't. No, we've made it to agenda, so I think we just move into confidential, right?
Director.
What's that?
Director.
I always forget about director reports.
You don't value us, begin.
You know, no comments. I'm kidding. Okay, do we have director reports? Mohammed?
Yeah, no, Esther actually beat me to it. And while I'm here, I'd just like to quickly go up and say, yeah, obviously we have the AMM motion discussing governance reform. As chair of governance committee, I wanted to give a brief update, and that is we finished phase one. We're now in phase two, which is options development. As of right now, we're working on the student consultation across our different categories, and we're targeting to have that start off this month, starting in this month and ending end of October, as you could have seen in the motion today. We are so far on track.
Thank you, Mohammed. Anyone else? As a reminder, relevant to the board as a whole. That's not a dig on Mohammed. I actually think it was. Aria, go ahead.
Just very quickly, you guys got a lot of invites for welcome week stuff that we can attend as a board, but I know Damien and I are working for orientation, so I'll connect with you and try to centralize everything. But if you can make it to these things, show up, like be there, like show up, but that's it.
Thank you, Aria. All right, perfect. Thank you so much, guys. Now on that note, Esther, we don't need a mover because it's an agenda, right?
No, typically you would, but standard advice that we don't really make it that formal with Robert's rule and all of that. So
Yeah.
we really just move into confidential unless someone objects to it.
Yeah. I think I agree with that change. Does anyone object to moving into confidential?
What we're trying to, Damien.
Okay, with that note, if we can move into confidential, just let me know We're out.
I think we've managed to go longer than the last board meeting in terms of time while starting.
Thank you. Okay, so on that note, last announcement is as a reminder about O Week, and I'll send out a link for people to get involved in O Week. It's been done in the past. It does help out quite a bit. So I'll send out that link, and anyone who can, please do help out. It's a very exciting week, and being involved with it is actually quite fun. So yeah, on that note, we have come to the end of our agenda, and the meeting is, oh, yeah, go.
Should we summarize what happened during confidential?
Right, thank you. I guess we could, is there, yeah, let me check.
No votes?
Yeah, there's no votes. Okay, perfect. But yeah, on that note, the meeting is now adjourned at 9:44 PM. Thank you.
Good night, Bush.
Good night. Bye.
Thank you.
Enjoy your